awake. Rainbow Dash found she would finally allow herself a moment to rest. Starlight Glimmer had vanished into the caves, and she and her friends had reclaimed their marks. She had never felt so relieved before. The moment she had first lost her talent, her body had turned into lead, her wings working overtime to simply keep her aloft. It was a strange sensation, having her athletic grace and speed stripped from her. She had felt as helpless as a foal again. She had to check her flank just to make sure it was back. Feeling light as a cloud, she let herself spiral slowly through the clouds as her friends trotted back to town. Cresting a low-hanging cloud, she flipped over, letting the sun warm her fur. "Feels great, doesn't it?" Rainbow Dash's eyes opened wide as the voice startled her. Glancing down, she smirked as she saw the dust-blue figure of Night Glider accompanying her. You have no idea. It stinks going from the fastest flyer in Equestria to a slowpoke," Dash said, grinning. "The fastest flyer, huh?" Night said incredulously. "Are you the most modest flyer in Equestria too?" "I don't know. Is that title available too?" Dash replied. Night burst into laughter. "Very funny," she said, flapping her wings swiftly, propelling her above the other mare. "I used to be pretty good too, although it has been a long time." "Want to shake off some of the rust?" "Sure," Night Glider said, grinning. Rainbow took the lead, diving down to earth. Glancing back, she gauged the other Pegasus, watching her speed. She could tell she was rusty, and it took her a moment to lock her wings properly for the dive. Dash smiled slightly when she saw the dusky pony start flapping in short strokes, keeping her tight form as she fell, generating speed. Dash could tell she was fast. Even now she was catching up. The flyer put on the speed, pulling out her dive slowly, angling back into the sky. The other mare followed her rainbow trail closely, bringing it up and replacing it with a dark blue comet. Night Glider could feel her heart start racing with an excitement she hadn't felt in years. The exhilaration of pulling up at such a high speed, feeling her stomach bottom out as the sun shone into her face, blinding her as she shot towards it. She could tell Dash wasn't telling empty lies. She was faster by far. With a grin on her muzzle, she realized it didn't matter. This was the first time she was truly flying in years, and she intended to enjoy it. The pair twirled in unison as they shot back towards the village, breaking through clouds as they left their trademark contrails in the air. Dash easily beat the other pony back to the ground, stretching her wings appreciatively after getting her speed back. Night landed gracefully alongside her, catching her breath. Haven't had a workout like that in a long time," she puffed, trotting around as she rested her aching wings. "How long has it been since you gave up your talent?" Dash asked. Night Glider thought back. "I honestly can't remember. It's like a fog ever since I gave it up. We all kept telling ourselves how happy we were, when we really weren't at all. I guess I tried to forget what I had before." "That sounds terrible. I lost my speed for only a few days," Dash said, trying to imagine giving up her ability for any long period of time. How long had Night gone without it? A month? A year? "Really, the only thing I can remember now is when I gave it up," Night said. "It's pretty obvious what my talent was. I loved to fly at night. When I was a little pony, I would always scare my parents, sneaking out and flying after dark. They would always telling me I was going to run muzzle first into a tree or a cliff or something." Night and Dash both chuckled at the thought, an old warning Pegasi parents told their children. "I just couldn't help it though. I just liked the peace and stillness of the dark. I would clear the sky of clouds and the starlight as I grew up, watching the moonlight spill over the ground with each kick. Dash smiled widely at the mare. I can see how that would be pretty cool. You might have to show me sometime. Only if you are not afraid of flying in the dark, Knight said, smirking. Dash grinned. I don't think you know this pony very well yet. Both ponies smiled at each other, looking into each other's eyes. Dash felt her face flush, glancing to the horizon in embarrassment. They're not even close to being back yet. Huh. Nope, Night Glider said, taking to the sky so she could see the distant path. We chased Glimmer pretty far. Walking back down could take your friends a while. We don't all have wings after all. Landing next to Dash, the two ponies stood in silence for a moment, stealing sideways glances at one another. Would you like to see my house? Knight finally said. Sure, we've got some time while we wait, right? It's, nice? Dash said, trying her best to be polite. The home wasn't much more than the ponies had been cooped up in for days. 4 mud brick walls and a thickly thatched roof. The bulk of the furniture was a simple log bed with a hay mattress, a very questionable looking dresser, and a sad little stool. Roughly cut out windows let a thin haze of light in through their cloudy panes. Well, it seemed much nicer when we were all the same. I guess now that I think of it, it's sort of a dump. Knight said. She trotted over and poked at the stool, prompting it to teeter on its side, a leg pulling looser as it collapsed to the ground. Both ponies burst into laughter as they watched the round seat awkwardly roll along the floorboards, as if struggling to right itself. I guess it needs some work, Knight said, trying to compose herself. It needs a wrecking ball, Dash offered. Couldn't hurt, Knight said, flopping down on the hay. She glanced over to Rainbow. Oh, sorry. Did you want to rest? Nah, I spent enough time resting the last few days to last a lifetime. Could say the same about me. I've spent who knows how many months in that damn nightmare, Knight replied. Dash settled down on the floor, giving the stool a small kick into the corner. How was it anyways, living like that? Knight sighed deeply, staring ahead into space, avoiding Dash's gaze. You don't have to tell me. No. It's okay. I don't really mind. It's just kind of embarrassing now. When we know how she was manipulating me, I feel like a fool, Knight said. You're not. She used some magic on you guys. I know a little bit about magic from hanging around with Twilight, and I know that was some powerful stuff, said Dash, trying to comfort the mare. Nodding to her, Knight allowed herself a small smile. Well, I'll tell you what I can remember. I was one of the few Pegasi in town, so we still flew a little bit, but for the most part, it was frowned upon. We were supposed to walk on the earth as much as we could, so we wouldn't flaunt our wings, and absolutely no walking on clouds. That was seen as mocking the poor earth ponies and unicorns. I think that sticks out the most, really. I just remember walking everywhere. We would have to go harvest some fruits or fetch some water, and I would just trudge along on my hooves, trying to keep up. I mean, I never felt that sad, because I had friends, but it felt really strange. Kind of like part of your life was missing. That sounds horrible, Dash said softly. When we were living with Glimmer, we just never thought about it. We were all equal, so we all walked and that was it. I always figured the unicorns gave up their magic, so why shouldn't we give up our flight? It seemed fair to me, and it made us feel closer somehow. How close? Dash asked, smiling at her. Did you have anyone special? Oh, no, absolutely not, Knight replied, as if it were out of the question. Loving another pony was the worst thing you could do. Not every pony could have some pony special. You can't force two ponies to love each other. So Glimmer made sure no pony had anyone to love. We just all stayed friends the whole time. And how long is that? Knight thought for a moment. I can't really remember. I was pretty young when I came here. I'm sure of that. I suppose I never really thought of it. Dash got up, trotting over to her hay bed. Settling down next to the dusky pony, she placed her hoof on the mare's. You never felt alone? Knight Glider blushed a bit at the sudden contact. Sometimes, she said, sitting up suddenly, looking into Dash's magenta eyes. Especially at night. No pony in town really liked the night. So I would go out walking sometimes, late into the evenings. But there was no pony that ever really wanted to share it with me. Dash leaned forward boldly, resting her muzzle against the mare's fluffy chest. You don't have to be alone, Knight. You could find someone special now. Knight's voice wavered slightly as Dash nuzzled against her body intimately. I could. The dark blue mare pulled back suddenly as Dash kissed her chest, her body suddenly on fire in the small room. Dash looked at her hesitantly. We don't have to if you don't want. Night Glider didn't respond, taking Dash's hooves into hers. She pulled the athletic pony against her, embracing her. Returning the hug, the other mare held her tight, nuzzling her neck gently as she kissed her gently. Night's inhibition melted away as Dash licked and kissed the pony's neck and shoulder, working slowly to her muzzle. Night's eyes fluttered open briefly as she met Dash's stare, before they locked together in a passionate kiss. Leading the inexperienced pony, Dash parted her lips slowly, tilting her muzzle and exploring her mouth fully. Knight's curious hooves started exploring Rainbow Dash's back and flank, making the mare sigh with delight between kisses. Breaking the embrace, Dash laid the other mare down gently, holding her hooves tightly. With a hungry stare, she smiled down at Knight. Just let me handle everything, okay? Before she could respond, Dash was on her, the greedy silent muzzle licking the other pony's exposed stomach and teeth. Knight felt her back legs clench spasmodically at the sensation, laughing softly as the mare explored her. That tickles, she shrieked. Grinning, Dash pulled back for a moment, letting the mare settle down. Knight relaxed, her legs splaying open, showing off her full assets to Dash. It was going to feel a lot better soon. Gently easing herself along Knight's dark, velvety inner thigh, Dash nuzzled against her emblazoned lips, caressing them gently with her fur as she worked up and down the other mare's sex. Booping her nose against the flyer's clit, Knight sighed softly, encouraging her on. Reaching out with her tongue, Dash gave her a small flick, tasting her for the first time. Dark blue thighs grazed her head as the other pony clenched at the sensation. Knight was unsure what to think at all. She couldn't remember everything, but she knew she would have to remember this. She felt so exposed and so strange at the same time, as this pony she barely knew was servicing her most private parts. Every small lick or caress was new to her, and whatever Rainbow had in mind, she wanted to see more. You're getting into this now, aren't you? Dash chuckled, lapping hungrily at the sweet juice flowing across Knight's thighs. The other pony could only murmur in approval, slowly thrusting her thighs against Dash's muzzle. Reaching down, Dash started rubbing her own marehood as she serviced her partner. Lapping up and down her entire slit, Dash increased her assault, pressing her greedy tongue inside Velvet's folds, teasing virgin territory as she finished each lap with a focused assault on the mare's rapidly winking clit. Night started moaning softly as her body started feeling alive, and an electric surge swelling up inside her. Her entire body tense as she felt something build up. Sensing it, her partner suckled her clit hard, burrowing her tongue under its fleshy hiding place. Night suddenly tense, splashes of cum landing on the hay. Dash rode her orgasm out, gently lapping at her nub until the other pony was spent. Surveying her handiwork, the mare smiled. Night had absolutely covered the edge of the bed with her cum. Strands of mare cum dripped down the bed, pooling on the well-worn floorboards as Night lay, panting, her winking cunt still drooling juice lewdly. Dash licked her muzzle as best she could with her long tongue. "Well, you certainly had that balled up for a while." That was incredible," Night struggled to say as she caught her breath. She still could feel her thighs quivering slightly as her body felt the orgasmic afterglow. Placing a hoof on her sex, she blushed when she realized just how much of a mess she had made. "Was that your first time?" Dash asked, laying down next to her. The personal contact with the other mare's fur was exotic and exciting. Night cuddled up to her, rubbing against the other mare's side. "Yeah, I think so." Dash was still rubbing herself gently, sighing slightly as she neared her own climax. She barely noticed as Night's dark hoof crept across her chest, holding her own hoof against her sex. She looked over at the other Pegasus. "You don't have to if you don't want to. I was just returning the favor for helping my friends," Dash said softly. "No, I want to," Night Glider whispered, crawling down along the mare's side, resting her muzzle on Rainbow Dash's thighs. She gasped as she smelled the strong scent of another mare. Dash was already very wet, slowly winking in invitation as Night reached her muzzle forward slowly. She reached out her tongue and tasted Dash. Slowly, she lost her hesitation, lapping awkwardly at the matted fur, trying to replicate Rainbow's skilled cunnilingus. Dash settled back onto the mattress, sighing as she let the other pony work. She was terribly unskilled, but enthusiastic. The amateur job actually turned Rainbow on, pushing her hips into the other mare's face as she tried various things to please her lover. It didn't take terribly long. Dash was already nearly over her peak. Just the sight of the attractive pony's white mane and cute muzzle working her over sent her into an orgasmic bliss. With a small cry, Rainbow climaxed herself. Although not nearly as impressive as the other mares, she still managed to coat Night's muzzle with her cum, dribbling down her fluffy chin to mix with the already pooled mare juices. Night kept lapping at her attentively, working her until Dash had to gently push her away. Muzzle dripping with cum, Night looked up innocently. "Was that good?" Dash grinned back at her. "Better than good." The mare settled her head on Dash's stomach. "I'm really glad." She sat there in silence for a moment, just looking up at Dash as she enjoyed her afterglow. "Maybe we can try again tonight, after everyone's asleep, at night." Dash nodded back at her. Cuddling closer to the other mare, Night felt herself dozing slightly against the soft fur of Dash's chest. Rainbow held her closely. I'll finally have someone to spend the night with, Night whispered as she closed her eyes.